Morning, Tom and Moira. That's all I see right now. How's everybody?
Hey, Bob. Yeah, I mean, profoundly sad this morning.
Oh, yeah, very disturbing. Very, very, very disturbing. Yeah, I can't imagine. I did a little bit of teaching up in Tumbler Ridge, and what a beautiful little community. Yeah, that's gonna profound impact. Awful.
Hi, Bob.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the February 11th Hospital District Board of Directors meeting to order. First, I'd like to acknowledge that we're conducting this meeting in the unceded traditional territories of the Shuswap Huipachesset First Nations, and we are very grateful for their opportunity to do so. We also have directors calling in from other territories, and I'd like to also acknowledge those nations and express our great gratitude and our respect. Notice to attendees and delegates that this meeting has been recorded and live streamed to YouTube on the Regional District website. If anyone is watching, please, and you have questions or comments, you can send them to responses@acrd.bc.ca, and they will be read at the end of the meeting. Then we'll do introductions. We'll start going this way today.
Good morning, everyone. Heather Zenner, Manager of Administrative Services.
Good morning, Aklama Penikote, Electoral Area Director for Sprout Lake.
Good morning, Susan Roth for Beaver Creek.
Good morning, Mike Sparrow. I am representing Cherry Creek.
Good morning, I'm Daniel Siam, the CAO for the ACRD.
Good morning, Terry Fong, Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you. And now we'll go into the directors calling in online. Director Siga.
Veda Siga, Director for Area C Long Beach.
Director Steer.
Yes, good morning. Councillor Tom Steer, appointed Director, District of Tofino.
Director Beckett.
Morning, Bob Beckett, representing Banfield Area A.
Director Coots.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mariah Coots. I'm the director for the Ottawa Central Government. Happy to be here.
Director Boyko.
Good morning, Fred Boyko, Electoral Area Director for Beaufort. Thank you.
Director Johnson.
Morning, Kirsten Johnson for Tokwat Nation.
And my name is Debbie Haggard. I am a counselor for the City of Port Alberni and Vice Chair of the Alberni Quequot Regional District and Chair of the Hospital Board. So we do have an agenda in front of us. Is there any additions from directors? Seeing none, is there any additions from the corporate officer?
There's no additions. Thank you.
Could I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Moved by Director Ross, seconded by Director Sparrow. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Any declarations or conflicts of interest? Seeing none, we have minutes from the Board of Directors meeting held on December 10th, 2025. Is any errors or omissions? Seeing none, could I motion that the minutes of the Alberni Quequot Regional Hospital District Board of Directors held on December 10th, 2025 be adopted? Moved by Director Ross, second by Director Steer. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. And we have two very important delegations here today. First, we have Dr. Charmaine Ans, who is our Medical Health Officer from Island Health, and today she's going to give an overview of health and population in the ACRD. And I'll just let everyone know she will be going over the 10 minutes, and I've already given her permission to take as long as she wants. And then we'll go to questions after. And I just want to thank you for coming here today because I know you're very busy. So Rudy, appreciate you coming. So whenever you're ready, please go ahead.
Thank you very much for the introduction and for the invitation. I am very happy to be here. It's my pleasure. I also want to recognize that I'm participating today in this conversation from the home of the I almost said Quebec, I thought I was in Tofino, from the Tishat and Huipatchesset people, and with a lot of gratitude for that. And also, because this is a presentation on the health and wellness of a population from a public health perspective, I just really want to recognize Tumbler Ridge and the health and wellness that they will be dealing with through this tragedy and loss and grief for the foreseeable future. And I think one of the things that unites us as small communities is how we know, how everybody knows everybody. So I think we especially recognize in our smaller communities what this means for a community of that size. It's horrible. So it I'd be remiss not to recognize that. Okay, so my purpose today is to give you a snapshot of the health and wellness of the population within this local health area. I may use the word local health area and region interchangeably. I'm meaning the same thing, which is the Alberni-Clayoquot local health area. My purpose today is to give you as much as I can that snapshot. In doing that, just to recognize I can only report on the information and data we have access to, and recognizing that it doesn't represent everyone within the population. And that's unfortunate, but I just want to highlight that. So there's no intention to miss anybody. And that means we have to have ongoing and further conversations. I'm going to be giving you a lot of the what, not necessarily the why. So the population right now, as of 2024, is just over 36,000 within the region. And that majority of the population sits within the city of Port Alberni. Within the region, about a third of the population is between 20 and 44 years of age. Median age is a little bit younger than the rest of the island. And from my perspective, a significant strength of the area is that about 20% of the population identify as Indigenous. What we're seeing in terms of projected population over time is a bit of a dip by the early 2030s and then coming back up again. But there's only going to be a projected slight increase in the population, less than what we're going to probably see across the rest of the island. Socioeconomic factors, again, this is important because this comes right down to the foundation of the social determinants of health. When we look at the number of households that spend over a third of their income, which is the definition for unaffordable housing, 36% of renters within the region are spending more than 30% of their income to rent. And about 13% of people who own their homes are spending over 30%. This is an example of where this doesn't represent the whole population. There is a significant portion of people who don't even have a home to rent or own. So I just want to make sure we recognize that population, and then that the mandate we have as a society to ensure housing. Medium after-tax household income is a little bit less compared to the rest of the island at about $63,000 annually. About just over half of the region has had post-secondary training or education, and about 14% of the population is considered low income. So let's start at the beginning, because this is where it all starts, is childhood and the best start in life. So within the region, approximately 1 in 5 kids live in single parent households, and about 18% of children and youth are in low income. So when we look at children that are growing up in two adult households versus 1 adult household, it's a significant disparity in the annual income, and that income alone is a significant factor for the social determinants and what it means for opportunities, education, food, so many factors, as well as stress and anxiety within the household. Infant mortality is the most exquisite indicator we have for a population in terms of social well-being. It is my favorite indicator for social well-being, not my favorite outcome, but my favorite indicator, because it encompasses all of the factors of society. Unfortunately, this region has the highest infant mortality on Vancouver Island, and it has stayed sustained over multiple reporting periods. I'm involved, I'm one of the chairs of the Infant Mortality Review Committee on Vancouver Island, and we have significant concerns about the sustained elevated infant mortality within the region. And we have a multi-jurisdictional, multi-partner working group formed to start to unpack those things so that we can start to make identify strategies and where we need to collectively intervene to ensure healthier starts for families and infants. One of the factors is these are low numbers, but the rates are high. So this is why we need it over time. One of the important contributors to infant mortality is prematurity, and we are seeing prematurity rates higher within the region. And then lastly, just for best start in life, I just wanted to identify that the live birth rate for parents under 20 has been declining over the years. You can see that's the yellow line, but it's still twice that for the rest of the island. This is a nuanced indicator. I want to say there's so many factors that go into that. There is some protective factors with pregnancy and live births for people under 20, especially for that parent, but there's also some risk factors, especially for the infant. So I just want to identify that this is a statistic we watch, and it has to be interpreted carefully. So smoking during pregnancy. Smoking is, again, another important contributor to infant mortality, but we can see within the region that the smoking within pregnant individuals compared to the rest of the island is actually less, which is very encouraging, but it's still 50% higher than that of the province. So we have some work to do. So kids, here's our future. We have been, for over 20 years, been looking at the Early Development Index across BC, across all school districts, looking at vulnerability domains, looking at what sets kids up to succeed in school and school achievement. And we can see over time, again, the yellow is this region, that it's very consistent with the rest of the island and the rest of the province. In fact, we're not seeing much difference in any of our school districts anymore. Like, we're all essentially a third of kids are considered vulnerable in one or more domains, which is not about individual children, but it's really about a census reporting on kids as a population, and that we need then to have extra attention, intention, supports, environments for children to succeed in school and the school environments. And so this is just a really important indicator for us, but it's something, of course, our schools are very tuned into and always aware of, as well as our other partners. Immunization rates. Yellow again is the region. We have our early childhood rates are a little bit less compared to the rest of the island, not significant. Some of this is actually related to access. It's not that parents don't want to be immunized, it's the opportunity to receive vaccine especially in our more rural, remote communities. So we're working very hard on that to increase access. You can see for the school-based immunizations for grade 6 and grade 9, it's very similar to the rest of the island. And high school completion rate. This is something the region needs to be congratulated on within this school district. You can see that year over year, this rate continues to increase. It's now essentially the same as BC, exceeds that of the rest of the island. And this is, of course, a huge testament to the long-term dedication of the district staff for student achievement. So when we look at youth mental health, this one's red, it should be yellow. We are seeing decreasing rates of anxiety and depression. You can see how it spiked for everybody during the pandemic. Pandemic was a terrible time for our youth. And COVID did not directly impact them, but we impacted them through our response. So it's going to take a while for this population to recover from what we did to them in our response. But you can see we're trending downwards now, thankfully, and this is specific to this region, in mood and anxiety disorders, and then it's less than that for the rest of the island. So about 56% of youth students are rating their mental health as good to excellent. I think we can do better. And so just to recognize too that while this trend is going down, it's 2.5 times higher in the females than compared to males. Here, early childhood development, I'm not going to go through all of these, but I just really want to point out the one indicator in the bottom right-hand corner, which is 82% of youth reported, and it shouldn't be early childhood, it's youth, at least one adult in their life that cared about them, that wasn't either in their family or their school. This is a very powerful indicator for the well-being of that young person. So we know that when somebody feels and believes that somebody cares about them, that they will be okay in spite of how terrible or traumatic or difficult their life might be. So this is an indicator that I think is one we really need to pay attention to, and again, through our collective work, increase the access for young people to feel cared about by somebody outside of their family and in their school. Youth substance use. So there's just a couple, this is a busy slide, but I just want to bring your attention just to a couple points. One is as it relates to alcohol, that of almost the half of youth, that's grade 8 to 12, that report having drunk alcohol, over a third of them are binge drinking. So the definition is 5 or more drinks in an occasion, and that's what they report as 35%. That's a significant rate. Tobacco, you can see again that we're having, when we've been making gains in the tobacco world, we're now going backwards in terms of smoking rates. And then just to, cannabis is more widely used than tobacco. Now here's some important points about vaping. This is of course a very significant issue in all of our schools and school districts. About a third of kids are reporting vaping. Vaping inevitably has to do with nicotine, and the industry profits from nicotine addiction. So the industry has been very intentional on bringing our kids into this world of addiction. And you can see with the vaping that of those third that have ever vaped, almost 3/4 are vaping within 30 minutes of waking up. That is not vaping for social reasons. That's vaping because there's an addiction. Vaping is, through nicotine, is altering neural pathways in that developing brain, which increases the likelihood of other addictions and addictive and risky behavior. So these are significant neural pathways that are being influenced at an early age. And we're not exactly sure how to tackle this, except we have some opportunities through federal legislation in terms of advertising, flavors, and as much as we can tighten our policies around vaping and vaping products, including nicotine pouches. We really have to do that. Another emerging issue for our youth are up against so many issues right now. Youth gambling, especially online gambling, is on the rise, and we're seeing again, gambling is in the medical world in our DSM-5 as a diagnostic addiction. It's a behavioral addiction. So youth gambling, this is a national study that indicated that about 1 in 3 young adults are reporting online gambling. And then when you ask them, is this impacting through harms? A third, almost a quarter are saying yes, they're experiencing harms. But when you take those same individuals through the criteria of problem gambling, it's actually more like 70% are already experiencing problem gambling. So what does this mean for youth in terms of disposable income? And again, affecting that developing brain in terms of neural pathways for addiction, reward, pleasure, etc. And when we look at the region, this is now for central Vancouver Island, not just Alberni Clayoquot, that so Nanaimo Oceanside included, 35% of kids are saying they gamble for money within this region, within the area. And again, the important thing here is this is more important difference is males are more likely to have engaged in gambling, and gambling for things other than money can sometimes lead to gambling for money. So general population. Sorry, this isn't a good news slide. The life expectancy at birth is about 5 years less than that of Vancouver Island. That isn't so much of a concern for me as a public health physician as the downward trend over time since 2014. You can see there has been that continual downward trend, and it seemed to accelerate over the pandemic. So when we think about life expectancy, I will like to consider we have to consider the drivers, what's affecting that. So we're going to talk about potential years of life lost, which is when we measure the amount of years lost for dying before 75 years of age. So the younger you are when you die, the more you contribute, that death contributes to the potential years of life lost. That's what this indicator is about. When we pull out what's impacting the most to those earlier deaths, so that you're dying before 75 and weighing up those years compared to the rest of the province, we can see for this area that we're 2.5 times higher for deaths related to alcohol, 2.8 times higher compared to the rest of the province. 1.9 times higher related to accidental injuries, which is actually the vast majority is drug poisonings, which includes alcohol again and the unregulated drug supply. Higher burden due to self-harm and suicide, and a higher burden due to motor vehicle incidents. So I want to talk about motor vehicles. I live in Tofino. I deal with a lot of road rage. Too many motorhomes. But it's interesting when we look at the motor vehicle incidents. I thought you would be interested, so I wanted to bring up motor vehicle incidents. So again, this is contributing to the potential years of life lost in terms of that premature deaths. You can see that compared to the island is actually better overall than the rest of BC for motor vehicle incidents, but we're higher within the Central Island, so Alberni, Clayoquot, Oceanside, Greater Nanaimo. And when you look at Alberni, Clayoquot compared to the rest of the island, it's 1.6 times higher. So when we break out, and now this is ICBC data, so I cannot explain all of the details regarding it. We have some questions we're going back to ICBC with, so I'm happier to dig deeper into it if there's any specific questions. But what we see is when we look at those incidents, which are deaths versus injuries, we've categorized them according to the speed zone in which they happen. So you can see most of the injuries and most of the deaths are happening less than 80 kilometers an hour zones. And when I break it out by community, there's Port Alberni, Tofino, and Ucluelet, that the majority of crashes, except for Yuki, are happening within the municipal boundaries. And yeah, I thought you'd find that interesting because we think there's a whole lot more happening out on the highway when really the majority are happening within the municipal boundaries. Alcohol, I'm not going to spend too much on this. I think many of you have heard this from me before, except this is my single substance of concern as it relates to the region. When we look at the number of standard drinks per week for the population aged 15 and over, so we're including the non-legal age group in that statistic, there's an average of 15.3 standard drinks per week consumed per person, 15 years and older. This is compared to BC and the rest of the island. And on the left-hand side, there is our Canadian guidelines for alcohol, where we know that once a person is consuming more than 7 standard drinks per week, they are entering into the increasingly high risk category for individual outcomes and health outcomes, which includes cancer risks. So alcohol is a carcinogen. We don't talk about that very much. And so it's not about the immediate impact, it's the longer term impact in contributing to cancer. And for women, it's mainly breast cancer. And for men and women, it's also anything in the gastrointestinal tract, so bowel cancer, esophageal cancer. It's a contributor. So this is just to help keep it in perspective what we're dealing with here. When we look at the hospital admissions due to alcohol and unregulated drug supply, which is the opioids, the purple is Alberni, Clayoquot. For alcohol, the blue is the unregulated drug supply for this region, and then the lighter bars are for the rest of the island. And this is just to help put in context that consumption directly equals harms. And I'm showing this in terms of the individual, but I don't want to lose sight of the fact that individual harms are not all the harms. There is far more expansion of those harms into society, to families, community, law enforcement, justice, work, loss of work, etc. And when we look at the death rate wholly or partially contributed to alcohol by citizens within this region, the death rate has been increasing, and you can see how it's diverging higher away from the rest of the island. So again, emphasizing consumption is proportionate to harms. And then when we look at tobacco, just to the two top bars, the yellow, again, being this region, the blue, the island, and then the orange, this region, and the blue, the island, the top being hospitalization rates and the bottom, death rates. The important thing to take away from this slide is that we're again seeing a divergence, an increase in hospitalization rates related to tobacco compared to the rest of the island. So we have another opportunity for intervention, and the orange is death rates. So while the numbers are small, you can see that there is a divergence again in this region starting to raise higher, go higher, trend higher than the rest of the island. We live along the water. It's our joy, and it can also be an issue. But within the central Vancouver Island area, again, for the whole health service delivery area, because we couldn't break it down specifically, there's about 8 fatal drownings a year. As the non-fatal, of all the non-fatal drownings that happen on Vancouver Island, about a third are in this central Vancouver Island area. As it relates to Pacific Rim National Park, of all of the visitor safety incidents, 43% are related to the water. And of all of our youth, about 70% report being a confident swimmer. So when we look at Tofino and that part of the coast, I bring this up because this is a really wonderful community-led initiative that was started in 2025 with the Tofino Surf Life-Saving Club. In that small period of time, they have 68 members. About half of them now have advanced training. This summer, they had 16 engagement sessions at Cox Bay, which resulted in a lot of interactions with beachgoers. And while these engagement sessions were just for periods of time, over those engagement sessions, there was an average of 1 incident or rescue that per every 2 to 3 sessions that the members had to participate in. So it shows that it's not just an academic exercise, but there is a tangible intervention that's happening through this work, the Tofino Life Saving Club, and I'm really excited to see where this group goes from here. We're almost done. Food security, food costs us a lot of money. Well, it says we're a little bit less compared to the rest of the island. The point is that for grade 12 students, 40% are feeling hungry because they're not getting enough to eat. And about 10% of youth go to bed at least some of the time feeling hungry. And of all of the adults in the area, about 1 in 5 are concerned about food security over the last year. Cancer rates, I'm not going to spend much time on this to say this area does not diverge, it's not that different. We're really good, or maybe better than the, help, it's okay. Yeah. Yeah, this is just to show there isn't excess cancer rates within the region. Now, just 2 slides on seniors. When we look at this population 75 and plus, 75 plus, in 2024, they're making up about 10% of the what? Oh. Did I stop the share? Thank you, Ren. So it did pop up to say Zoom. There was a Zoom thing that went around, like we lost internet or something.
Yeah, we just got disconnected.
We got the boss here. We'll be okay. Pardon me? Yeah. There's always a way, right? Squeeze more money out of all of us. Actually, we've discontinued Zoom in the health authority. Teams. Yeah. I know, we all got very used to Zoom over the pandemic, didn't we? Yeah. Because we all had to have something we could all get onto. Yeah. Yeah.
For those people online, we're just having a little bit of technical difficulties that are trying to be fixed, so please hang on just a moment.
I look so serious with my arms crossed. Okay. Fantastic. Nice. That's really lovely. Yeah. So do you have like life jackets, flotation devices down on the docks and stuff? Actually, I was on to our seniors. Thank you very much. So when we look at this population age 75 plus in 2024, they represent 10% of the overall population. You're not going to have a huge population growth over the next 20 years, but you can see that the 75 plus group does proportionately increase such that in 2044, they would be expected to contribute to about 15% of the population. And when we look at some of the more specific factors, socioeconomic factors for seniors, again, this is an important social determinant of health. The number of those that report good or excellent health is a little bit, but essentially the same as the rest of the island. And a sense of 60% have a strong sense of community belonging, and their income and food insecurity. And then how many wildfires do we need to go through to know that we have climate change happening, affecting our environment? So year over year, we're having sustained drought such that our water tables are not able to recharge in a way that starts to reduce that drought risk. But we can see that this is just to show you the annual days of level 5 drought. Can you imagine level 5 droughts on Vancouver Island? How many days we've had level 5 drought since 2021. There's a lot of variability over the years, but again, it's that impact year over year. And of course, when there's drought, there's a lot of implications for water quality, water quantity, which also means we're at risk for fires and wildfires and interface fires. When we have fires, we have what happens with the fire, and then we also have air quality. And I'm coming back to the regional district this afternoon with colleagues to talk about air quality from the Mount Underwood fire. But this is here just to show the days with poor air quality, very high, and moderate. And you can see that those days with poor air quality are not abating over time. So here's my key messages. If you remember nothing, just that we have some socioeconomic factors that are improving and showing encouraging trends. And I really like I know sometimes these messages come across as, oh, there's so much to do, but we need to find the things that are working and celebrate those and continue to enhance those and invest in those. So there are some really good indicators. Decreasing and lower life expectancy is driven by preventable factors, and this can be reversed. So this is the empowering key message, is that there's interventions. This is not something we just have to accept as a society and as a community. Psychoactive substance-related harms are high, especially related to alcohol. I want to point out tobacco, we need to keep our eye on it. And while it's not a psychoactive substance, we really need to keep our eye on the online gambling too. And then supporting early childhood development. We will never, ever, ever go wrong in investing in early childhood. And as much as we invest in early childhood, that not only improves the life and well-being at that point in time, but we know that early childhood predicts the trajectory of that individual's life in terms of health outcomes, education success, everything. So again, and I love how this works in our smaller communities, how much we celebrate and invest in our kids, and I just want to continue to encourage that. And thank you for all of the excellent work that's done for the whole population, but especially for our youth. Here's some data resources, and that's how you can get a hold of me. So thank you.
Thank you so much. There was a lot of information to take in. But
Sorry.
some of it was good information. I mean, good trend. So before I go to questions, I just want to make a couple comments about what I learned. And road rage just doesn't happen in Tofino. There's a lot of road rage in Port Alberni as well. I have been in 3 accidents. One of them was quite serious. None of them were my fault. And 2 of them were just fender benders, and they were all in the Walmart area. And my doctor said, stay away from Walmart. So I think that must be a high accident area. I'm not sure, but that's something to look into. And one thing I was surprised about was the median age. I always thought we were an older population. That was very surprising. So thank you for that. And I'm part of the community action team here locally, and we've worked really hard to try and decrease drug poisonings in our community. At one point, they were starting to go on a downward trend, but I guess maybe that's not the case anymore. But I feel like we've stalled on that. So we need to do some additional work on that area. So thank you for that. And I just want to applaud School District 70. I know we were one of the lower graduation rates at one time, and this is something that we really focus on. So it's nice to see that they succeeded in that area. And the online gambling surprised me. I had no idea about that. Yeah. So I'll go to Director Cote and Director Roth second. Please go ahead, Director Cote.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you so much for this quite in-depth report. I've been writing a couple of questions down. So I have 3 questions for you. Why is the birth rate the way it is? Is there anything specific that we should be targeting with women that are pregnant? Like, is there something that we could do to benefit an advertising or education or something like that? What could we do for that? The death rates, is it higher with men or women? And kind of why? And the gambling is concerning. Is that related to gangs? So those are my questions. Thank you.
3 questions I will not be able to sufficiently answer. Just trying to manage expectations. The first question regarding the birth rate, that's a very nuanced discussion. And like I mentioned, that there's actually a protective factor in many young women who have a baby before the age of 20. So I think it is that statistic is a what, it doesn't do the why. And so that's where I think we have some general thoughts about that as an indicator for early starts in life and women's wellness, that I don't think there's going to be one right answer. And so it's a trend that's continuing to decrease. So from our perspective, that's a positive trend. So it's going the right way. So maybe we don't want to fix what's not broke if it's going the right way. But it's something that we need to keep our eyes and ears open to make sure we understand that we're not missing something. We know we need to improve overall access to prenatal care. But this isn't about prenatal care. This is now you're pregnant. So I don't have an easy answer for that, but it's one that should make us go, I need to know more. Secondly, as it relates to the very good point about disaggregating by males and females, and I'll take that back to the team. So I don't have that breakdown, but I'm going to ask. And then thirdly, as it relates to gambling and gangs, I don't know that. I think it would be interesting to have a discussion with the local RCMP maybe, but maybe they might not know either as it relates to gangs. But this is online gambling. So in BC, we have the only online, BC manages the only online gambling, which is Play Now. And any other gambling online that's not through Play Now is illegal. The online world is a ubiquitous world. this is a huge challenge in what it means to regulate and to have, from my perspective, the importance of a public health approach, which means we put health and wellness at the center of policy making. Health and wellness benefits all of us. And so there's a whole lot we don't know. We know there's far more we don't know than we do know as it relates to gambling and online gambling, especially for youth. So the amount we can start to be curious, ask the questions, ask for data. We don't have the data. We need to get the data. How do we get the data? But that we also think big picture. We need the federal government and the provincial government, all layers, to be involved in the policy making in order to get in front of this. But it is a train out of the yard and this is a global challenge right now in many nations and jurisdictions, and no one has got it figured out because we're looking at that.
Thank you, Director Roth.
Thank you. My question actually was about youth and online gambling. And I was going to bring up BC Lottery Corporation and the tie, but I think you probably already discussed it there. But
So BCLC has the land-based casinos, and then Play Now is the online.
Play Now.
Yeah.
And I'm, are we setting a good example?
I think there's always room for improvement. I think that's fair. Yeah. And let's not underestimate the impact what's happening to youth brains in terms of gaming, and how we've kind of through online everything, that instant fast-paced reward and stimulation. And again, I think so many of these mechanisms are consistent across those addictive behaviors, be it legal or illegal. That's not the point. Isn't legal or illegal, right? It's what's the outcome. So, yeah.
Thank you, Director Steer. Please go ahead. Sorry, I caught you in drinking a cup of coffee.
Thank you. Through the chair. First, I'd like to really thank Dr. Anne Charmaine. Full disclosure, we're pretty good friends as well, living in Tofino. It is really important for the directors at the ACRD to understand the current health status of our region and identify those areas that are of concern and that would require attention. And one area that has consistently come up as identified and has been identified since I've been on council back in 2018 is the substance of concern that you clearly identified in our region is alcohol and alcohol consumption. And I want to commend some of the communities in the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District for starting to take charge in that area. The district of Ucluelet is in the process of developing a municipal alcohol policy as Port Alberni. And so those are areas that, and I will say, due to your presentations, that clearly identified those health risks associated, and which local government has some control over very directly to help mitigate some of those harms. So I really want to commend you for that. And also for identifying that the early support, early childhood development and the support for that in whatever ways that our community, and that can be broad reaching, that local government has authority over. And I think of many of the supports through recreation, et cetera, education as we go on. Those are the types of things that I think are important. And thank you for the shout out for the Tofino Life Saving Club, of which I am a member. We're right in the process of I'm scheduling training for the group on emergency first aid as related to the marine environment. So thank you very much again for your presentation, and look forward to hearing from you in the future.
She gave you a thumbs up, Tom. Director Beckett.
Thank you. Director Steer was talking about alcohol, and sorry, I should digress for just one moment. I want to thank you for the report. Data is critical for all of us to see a true and clear picture, to show trends, both negative and positive trends. And in saying that, when you had the slide up on alcohol related or impacted deaths, there was a considerable dip. I believe it was in 2016, a dramatic dip. And I'm wondering, do we know or understand why that dip was? And if that was the case, then using that information to put in place those measures that would start to bring the trend down lower again. So I hope I've been able to articulate that enough that you can respond. Thank you.
No, thank you for the question. I really appreciate that. And I'm going to just grab my slides real quick to see. Because what we saw across the province, I just want to say, yeah, there was a dip. I'm wondering, actually, I don't know. I can't explain the dip in 2016. This is the problem with small numbers, is we can't always explain that variability, but it's the trend over time. And I think when I look at this graph, my public health brain goes to an increasing trend over time upwards, with especially increased rate from the pandemic on. So I can't explain that specific dip. It could be an artifact. It might be data quality. I don't have a specific thing, but the pandemic and our pandemic response in terms of removing regulation in terms of alcohol access and density and even hours of sale, we went backwards in terms of regulation. So we deregulated. And we know that as we deregulate, that is a promotion of a substance, and that results in increased consumption, and that equals increased harm. So with or without the pandemic, there was already a trend upwards, which is interesting because we are seeing decreasing consumptions in other areas. And especially in the young adult population overall, we're seeing decreased consumption. But the region as a whole, the population as a whole, there is a trend that should not be ignored. And that means, in spite of the provincial deregulation, as much power and ability to denormalize that consumption within communities is within the power of the municipalities and us as citizens. So we need to gain the power. We need to use our power. That's my thought. And I also want to, and I thank Councillor Steer, Tom, for bringing up the very good work in the municipalities within this region with the municipal alcohol policies. And now Tofino has taken it a step further into working on a community alcohol strategy, which is a step higher. And so there is a significant amount of goodwill and effort to get in front of this trend. But great question. Great question, Bob. And I wish I had an answer for that dip, but the trend overall is and the increase since the pandemic, and that's directly related to one, deregulation, and two, to social isolation and loss of connection.
Thank you. Director Siga, please go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, my question is around the birth outcomes. And I have to commend the government on acknowledging that specialized midwife care throughout the pregnancy is important for healthy birth outcomes because issues can be caught early. But I also think that supports throughout the pregnancy, family supports, community supports are critical. And we're in a situation here where women need to travel up to 3 hours and live out until their delivery because we have no birthing service in Tofino. And what I'm wondering is, like, obviously this is putting added stress on the women who are expecting and their whole family because they then have to travel out as well. So not only is it expensive and stressful, many of these pregnancies, I believe, could be managed if we had an updated health care center. We're not being provided with wraparound services in pregnancy and delivery because of the lack of a new center, which is an issue. It's something that the community has asked for 40 years. And So what I would like to know is, what are the birth outcomes comparatively prior to the discontinuation of delivery services in the Tofino Hospital and after? And I'm just wondering if you have that data.
So when you say birth outcomes, can you just, are there specific indicators or outcomes you're referencing?
Well, you were saying that the birth outcomes are poorer now.
So the indicator was very specific to infant mortality, which is death of an infant before the age of 12 months. And those deaths can be any time in that infant's life from being born to 12 months, with the most common contributor to that infant death being prematurity. We don't actually really understand a lot or everything as it relates to prematurity. But you bring up a good point about, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's about access to care and services and what that looks like. That's an excellent point. This is a challenge in all of our rural and smaller urban centers, as we have less human and other resources to provide services. So it is a challenge. I want to look at these things as an opportunity. What are the solutions based on what's the issue? So I unfortunately don't have access to or data to give a more fulsome picture about birth outcomes, except for the infant mortality. As it relates to infant mortality, though, I think it might be worth clarifying that the majority of infant deaths within the region are not happening on the coast. They're happening within more within the Port Alberni area. If that's helpful, I hope.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was worried about the data just because I just feel like there's fewer services for pregnant women on the coast now than there was historically.
Thank you, Director Sparrow, then Director Boyko. Please go ahead, Director Sparrow.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. It's a lot of information taken in one morning. That's okay. My question actually is to do with cell phones in the schools. Other jurisdictions in the world are removing cell phones in the schools. Do you think that would benefit here if you were to do that for the mental health and the well-being of the children?
That is such a great question. I actually would redirect that question back to the superintendent. I don't want to speak for someone else because the solutions need to be based on your population, right? So I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they've done. I don't know how much of an issue it is. But you're right. People are trying to find solutions. It'll be very interesting to follow Australia and see what happens. It's not related to school, but just, I don't know how they're going to ban youth from social media. But I think as jurisdictions and areas try things, we're going to have to learn from those experiences, but not wait for other people's success. We also need to try our own things, and I don't know what those things are right now in this school district. But the superintendent would. And I'm not a politician.
Thank you, Director Boyko. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I have three quick questions.
Oh.
You said the population is decreasing by 3.9%, but in 2034, but from the City of Port Alberni Economic Development, they say a family is moving to town every week. So I'm just trying to figure out what the numbers are coming from, which one's the most accurate.
Can you repeat that, Director Boyko?
The numbers that she presented was populations decreasing by 3.9% by 2034. The City of Port Alberni Economic Development is telling us the city is families moving to town every week. Which one is the most accurate number? Where are those numbers coming from?
Okay, I understand your question. So my statistic that I provided was from BC Stats and the population projection data. So reconciling that information, I agree that's important. So we have, so it's like the bucket where you have something the bucket with the tap on top and the spigot on the bottom. So something's coming in and something's coming out. So what, you know, it's balancing out an understanding of, so there's in migration, but then there's going to be out migration. There's going to be, you know, other reasons why a population is not here anymore. So it's in understanding that balance, but I'm not sure these things are going to be mutually exclusive, but it's a great question.
Thank you.
Did you have another question, Director Boyko?
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. Director Coots?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to kind of continue on that question from Director Boyko. What user group would you then suggest would be the best direction for us as regional leadership to kind of figure out those numbers, while also understanding and respecting the fact that like this may perhaps be due to the fact that a lot of the families that are moving here are substantially younger families perhaps, and as we have seen, our population numbers do seem to be a bit higher in the younger age group category, but could that perhaps be to do with it? It's the fact that we had or are having a larger number of seniors versus versus the larger number of younger families coming in. Do we think that that may have to do with the age categories and why those numbers differ so much? It was definitely something that kind of triggered in my brain as well too. Thank you.
So there's the question about who to go to reconcile all that. I'm guessing there's going to be resources within your staff to pull that together, and we of course would be happy to help through our access to data and our EPI teams to support that conversation. But you know, it's a very dynamic process about who's in a population and what population numbers are. So you do have a younger median age. So that means you do have younger people here, and that's very positive. But you also have a proportion of the population that's aging and aging in place. And as we don't live indefinitely, and people do pass away, and then that you'll notice that there's quite a dip in the, 45 to 64 over time. And that's because they're aging into the older age group, right? So they're not, there isn't the same replacement into that age category. So there's, it's a very dynamic process. The point is that over time, you're increasing over the next 20 years, it's projected you're going to increase, but not a lot. So people don't always stay in their community for many reasons. Employment, I need access to other services. I don't have what I need as I'm old. So, you know, there's what is it that motivates people to leave communities or move away? What motivates you to move into a community? So again, it's that two sides of the bucket, coming in and going out, and the portions of those populations, those take that takes more of a conversation than just me throwing up a graph, but I don't have a quick answer on the details of those population dynamics. And I'm not, maybe, I'm guessing, because my belief is that communities have most of the answers, if not all of them, within themselves. So I'm guessing there's going to be some other folks within your community that can contribute to that conversation to round out a better understanding, maybe including the Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you. I'm going to give you one plausible scenario for why there is a big dip between the ages of 45 and 64 is my son is at the 45 age group, and we graduated, that was in the early 80s. We were in a severe recession, and most of the people that he went to school with left Port Alberni because there was no jobs. So that could be a possible explanation for that dip.
Jobs are really important. Jobs are what's going to keep people here and keep the community growing, and it's your tax base. So yeah,
I agree. Director Boyko, do you mind just putting your hand down if you don't have another question? I don't want to get confused. Thank you. Director Cote.
Thank you. I was basically going to say, similar to what Chair Haggard was saying about her son moving away. My son also moved away. And has no intention of coming back. But I am seeing an influx of from an economics driver. Colson's is a big employer, and I'm seeing people move to town that are coming with experience in different fields, and yeah, so I see an increase. And there's other economic stimulants that are happening at the moment. So we are seeing people come in, and they're of all age. So thanks.
Yeah, they are. This is a great community to be in. My husband and I have contributed to the younger population by both of our sons living now in Port Alberni. So,
And we appreciate that. Director Steer.
Yes, thank you through the chair. Charmaine, one of the things that struck me in this presentation today was back in 2018 when our former medical health officer, Dr. Hasselbeck, presented to the District of Tofino, and when he identified some of the major public health and safety issues that were occurring in our region, one of the questions from council was, what can local government do? What are the tools and levers that we have available to us? And at some point, maybe not right now, but maybe some point in the future, we can come back, and when you've identified a number of the concerns from a public health perspective and from a regional district, what are those tools and levers that we have available to us to help and address it? And I know that Marcia is going to be presenting next, and she may have some of those answers that can be there. But from a public health perspective, I think it'd be important for the board to have an understanding of those tools available to local government to be able to help mitigate some of those issues that come forward.
yeah, thanks for that.
Director Steer, you asked my question. That's what I was going to close on. So thank you for that. And I'm going to be watching that community alcohol strategy that your community is working on. I think that's something that Port Alberni could adopt as well. I think that's a great idea. So I'll be watching that. Did you have any final closing comments? Well, thank you so much for coming here today. We really appreciate it. I think we all learned so much from your presentation today, and I think we have a lot of work to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm really grateful. Okay.
Next on the agenda, we have Marcy DeWitt, who is the Alberni Kukwat Health Network Coordinator, and she's going to give us an annual update on the organization. And it's an organization that Director Cote and myself both sit on, and we just really appreciate all the good work that you do. Oh, and Director Sika too, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's a little bit loud. As mentioned, my name is Marcy DeWitt. I'm the coordinator for the Alberni Kukwat Health Network. Really excited to come talk to you a little bit about what we've been up to this past year. So this is for 2025. Acknowledging that I want to give you a brief overview and have plans to come back with some additional data and information on the data pieces that we've shared in your agenda package. So the Alberni Kukwat Health Network is a health network that is funded through Island Health, hosted here through the regional districts, and we have been working collaboratively since 2011, 2012, and mostly well and collaboratively since 2015. So as all multidisciplinary networks that have really big tasks in front of them, we went through quite a lot of storming, forming, norming, a lot of storming in that first 3 years. And in 2014, we really came to an agreement about how we were going to work. And since 2015, we've had this increasing ease around our process and the work that we're able to do. So get to talk to you a little bit about that, the history, as well as what we've been able to do just this year. So Charmaine was mentioning health and wellness at the forefront. And I know Island Health gets to dive into some of these very specific health indicators, very specific interventions. And we're really looking at keeping that health and wellness at the forefront. So we're looking at the social determinants of health. What are these factors that impact the health and wellness in our community that we as a multidisciplinary group have the opportunity to impact? This work, I just want to point out, is supported through contracts with Island Health. So they do give us support to ensure that this work is done, well coordinated and resourced. And this is done in each regional district on Vancouver Island. So the health network has a very specific structure. We use a consensus-based model, and we have a table of partners who assist in our governance. So this is a great group of folks. This is our representation from 2025. Throughout the years, we have benefited immensely from the participation of local governments. We traditionally have had representation from each local government in the region, as well as the school district, other key community partners, folks such as the Banfield Community School Association, and other people that really help to create a rich perspective of what it looks like in our region, in the Alberni Valley, Barclay communities, and on the West Coast. So with that table and just kind of that overall governance, we do quite a lot of work, but we also stand up action tables and support other action tables to look into specific interventions and issue areas. We look at different ways that we can do community engagement, so making sure that we are engaging with the whole of the regional district and bringing voices from the community up into our decision-making process. And then we're also really working at making those connections between organizations. So networking the networks, looking for good ideas, looking for who's doing what, and trying to assist with those conversations. So, some of our highlights. Over the years, we've just had a lot of opportunity to look at bringing information up from the communities, having the resources to do that action planning, well, I guess priority identification, planning, action planning, and implementation. So we've really been able to do this full cycle. I've had the privilege of being the coordinator for, I'm past 10 years now. So we've seen this process repeat a few times and had some really wonderful big successes due to the fact that we are just kind of on an ongoing basis, scoping for what priorities are coming up in community, both from what we're hearing, as well as from the fabulous data that we can get out of Census, out of Island Health. I want to just kind of put another hat on and make sure that everybody's aware that the vital signs report for the Alberni Valley will be coming out in May, which will have a lot of the information that you were asking about published. And ensuring that all that comes into our decision-making process and that we have that ability to assist in supporting or moving forward projects that impact the social determinants of health. So our most recent strategic plan, 2024, I think it's our third strategic plan that I've had the privilege of preparing. We really wanted to tone down or pare down into what's important. So we identified network development, which is one of those priorities that just never goes away. Building good relationships, ensuring that we have that network of networks, that we're connecting well. We identified communicating and doing outreach better. So these are key things. We want to make sure that we're bringing forward good data. We want to make sure that we're informing good decisions, not just at our own table, but at other tables throughout the region. So you'll see a little bit of the work that we accomplished this year with that goal in mind. And then our kind of most active priority area is poverty reduction. with those 4 priority areas that we identified in our 2012 report: housing, income supports, access to services, and equity and destigmatization. So working around those areas, combining the data, and really looking at where do we have leverage and opportunities to improve in the region. So just speaking to some of the successes within each one of these priority areas. Network development, we've had a well-functioning consensus-based table functioning for over 10 years now. And I think that the consensus-based piece is really important because we are leveling out the playing field within our discussions, and folks, from the community have just as much decision-making power as our local government. And all of that information is flowing quite nice. So we have a very trusting table where honest conversations can take place. This year, we have a newly functioning executive committee, which has been a great support to me. Really appreciate having a small crew of folks that are assisting me with big decisions, contracts, budgets, anything that's a little bit stickier. So we've kind of transitioned from that role just being a chairperson and solely on the role or on the head of 1 or 2 people to now being 3 to 4 individuals that I can reach out to and pull together. And lastly, but not least, we've been working closely with the City of Alberni on the Alberni Valley Continuum of Care Coalition. So very similar to work that's been done in the coastal communities on the West Coast around pulling together key service providers to look at what our priorities are for those populations that are being served within mental health, public health, and other community organizations. And they have very much identified a couple key interventions that I'll talk to you a little bit more about. Around poverty reduction, this year we've had the opportunity to combine that poverty reduction lens with our communications priority area. So this is something that we've been working on since 2017. One of the biggest pieces of work that we did put together was the action plan in 2022. And this year we moved forward with putting together an update to those data pieces with the up-to-date census and other information included. So our 2025 poverty reduction data updates, it's in your agenda package, and I will come back and talk to you a little bit more about what this looks like. But we really wanted to pull together the successes, what is known now, so new data, new information, new community stories, as well as any of those kind of updated issue areas. So childcare is a great example. We've done some great work since 2022, even 2020, but there's still work to be done. And community voice is really pointing to some of the things that we are hearing needs to be done. We don't have good data on it yet. We also worked collaboratively with the Living Wage Association of BC and BC Policy Solutions to pull together and publish the 2025 living wage for Port Alberni. So that comes out to $22.60. And I've included the full breakdown that we prepared to give you more information on this. Again, something that I'll come back and talk to you a lot more about. One of the things that I really want to stress is that we don't want to put necessarily all of the pressure on employers around the living wage. The living wage is a really useful calculation that's been done by economists, partners at Vancity, in order to point out some of the levers that we have in local government, provincial government, and federal government to better support folks that are in that kind of working poor demographic. So anybody earning under those kind of annual limits of about 70,000 annually will benefit from specific levers. Locally, those are very much looking like robust transportation systems, housing across the continuum, as well as childcare. Those were kind of the top 3 levers that we can, as a region, both advocate for to provincial and federal governments, but also look at good policy, look at good planning in order to support those. Transportation is one of the best examples. If a robust system existed for families to have one less car, the living wage would be $2 less annually. And I think Tom might be able to point out just the improvements that we've seen in the West Coast communities as well around the living wage when it comes to affordable housing. So that increase in affordable housing availability in the District of Tofino has really diminished or decreased the living wage and stopped that rapid inflation that we were seeing in West Coast communities. So right into transportation and access. This year we got to get together with everybody locally and celebrate BC Transit taking on the West Coast system. So that was a big win that we got to be involved with at the very beginning in advocacy and then later in supporting planning. This year, the Alberni Valley Continuum of Care Coalition, it's a mouthful, has also identified that transportation is a key piece that they want to learn more about. Not just BC Transit, but also medical transportation and how we're moving people throughout the region. So that will be a priority for that group in this next year. And really just looking at supporting many of these groups around the conversations, both for employment and education related transportation, but also this medical access across to other sides of the island and specialists. Communities building futures. So I've come to speak to you a few times about this project. This was the last year that the ACHN was able to support what we initiated with the Communities Building Youth Futures with funding. And we were able to provide funding both to the West Coast communities and the Barclay communities in order to see the youth safe spaces and the youth facilitation maintained in those communities. And it sounds like an actual legacy was started. So those youth safe spaces have been kind of adopted into practice. We were able to partner well with the Alberni Valley for bringing the Foundry here, as well as advocacy to ensure that there's outreach to the West Coast communities. And that now looks like a youth navigator position to maintain that consistency from our West Coast youth facilitator through the CBYF program. So really happy to see that. We are maintaining our relationship with the Foundry that's being developed to help support and inform that with the work that we've done in the past. So exciting times ahead for our youth and for youth supports in the region. And coming up, what we have planned so far. I just mentioned that we will be coming back for living wage and poverty reduction presentations. We want to be doing that both to local government as well as the business community. I have already done quite a number of presentations to Rotary clubs, and now we'll be working with Chamber to look at, how do we get this information out? How do we talk about what's important in communities? We will be doing a little bit more work on our communications development, these talks around transportation planning and advocacy, and looking to get back into the community and start our process again, doing some community engagement and identifying the new set of priorities. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Marcy. That was a great presentation. And I just want to say, as part of the group, the Community Building Youth Futures is one of the initiatives I think I've been most proud of and the good work that they did. So that was just an awesome project. We'll go to Director Roth first.
Thank you very much. Mine's not so much question, but a comment. I know that there's tens of millions of dollars coming into our area, into our region for social service agencies each year. And to me, I see problems getting worse with poverty and other problems. The one thing that I really notice is that people need a higher level of care. And we're offering supportive help and we need clinical help. And I was really saddened actually to read that North Island College has just suspended 15 programs. So I don't know what we can do, but I tie education to everything. And I feel like we need to get better at doing what we're doing. And I don't know, the dollars that come into our community, I feel like they're not being spent well, or something's wrong, something's missing. So I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
We go. Thank you. I think that is something important to note, and it's also one of those things that we need to start as a community, maybe looking at a little bit more, is digging into some of those conversations where we have data, and what that looks like, and how we can better support.
Director Steer?
Yeah, thank you once again, Marcy, and I think what stands out again, and thank you each year for the presentations to give updates to the board, as well as to the municipalities. It really, the diversity of work that is encompassed and supported by the health network. So I really want to commend on the diversity, touching on a number of areas, and you pointed those out there. And then just to touch on, as you mentioned, in terms of one of those indicators around housing and the critical importance there. And yes, it is true that the work through the Tofino Housing Corporation and the District of Tofino around those housing affordability and access to that. And that's in part by the data that's provided by a number of sources around, and that my phone, I apologize. But one of the things that I did is that was identified by the work that has been done across there to identify those areas where most supportive work is necessary. And so I want to thank you for that. And then just quickly on the living wage, one of the things that we've talked to the CBT about that would be important is to understand across the demographics. The living wage is calculated, as you know, on a family of 4 and the basic needs, et cetera, et cetera. We'd like to see across a more diverse spectrum of those as individuals or single parent families, or what those living wages calculations are. I'll turn this off. I'm sorry.
Did you have any response, Marcy?
Yes, actually this year, Tom, if you look in your agenda, the calculation has actually been averaged. So it's now a family of 4, a single parent family, and a single person. So the living wage is now the average of those households. And for your information, I've broken down the monthly and annual expenses and government transfers for each one of those populations. So it's really interesting to see that more robust calculation. I absolutely agree. And looking at where those policy interventions are, especially when we're looking at provincial and federal interventions and transfers.
Thank you. Before I go to Director Cote, I found it really interesting how you stress the living wage is $2 extra an hour because of lack of robust transportation system. And I don't think people that live in the regional district realize how important that is to families and what it's costing them every year. So I appreciate that mention. Director Cote.
Thank you. Through the chair. Thank you, Marcy. I so appreciate all the work that you do and the information that you collect. The data is so important to the work that we do at this regional district, understanding what our community is. Thank you also, to Dr. Charmaine Enns, because the data that you bring forward really paints the picture of where we need to focus. I'm really appreciative of the high level data that comes from Island Health. And then it seems that all of the connection, the lived experience comes through the health network, through the network of collaboration of all of the members at the table of partners is so important going forward. And definitely do not want to ever see this break down. I think that it needs to become a service of the regional district, which would be absolutely wonderful, with support from Island Health. I just want to also say to the chair and staff that I really appreciate having a hospital board meeting separate from the regular board meeting. I think that at least semi-annually would be such a good positive move for this board to be taking. So appreciate that. Thank you so much. Great job.
I agree 100%. Director Sparrow.
Thank you. You talked about the connectivity of buses and how it can lower. Does that connectivity include going for an effector from Port Alberni to Nanaimo, or are you just talking inside the Alberni Valley?
That is definitely an aspirational connection. And that really does increase folks' ability to get out for medical appointments, and without the reliance on the non-emergency Island Health transportation system and volunteer network systems if they don't have their own vehicle or for some reason can't because of the nature of conditions or appointments.
Any final questions or comments for Marcy? Thank you so much, Marcy. And again, it was nice seeing you in person. I'm used to seeing you by Zoom, so thanks for coming in. And thank you both for making the drive and the effort to be here today in person. Very much appreciated. Next is correspondence for action and correspondence for information. We have 2 items from Island Health. A program launches nursing careers closer to home, and the 2026 Youth Harm Reduction Award applications open March the 1st, 2026. And a resource package from Rural Coordination Center of BC on programs that improve rural health through provider support and community-based health initiatives, and a letter from the Tofino-Ucluelet Chamber of Commerce to the Ministry of Health and Ministry of Infrastructure regarding the Tofino General Hospital concept plan. Does anyone want to bring anything out and speak on it? Director Steer.
Yes, thank you through the chair. I think if you've read the letter, this was just in support of the work that we're going to be talking about further today in terms of the replacement of the Tofino General Hospital. From the chambers, they really wanted to illustrate, because they were getting the viewpoint, of course, on the public health and safety. They also wanted to bring in the importance of quality health care to the economic well-being of our communities. And I think that spills over into the conversations we've been having in the Alberni Valley, certainly at the meeting that was convened by our MLA in terms of recruitment and retention. So it is an important factor in the well-being of our communities, and was just another added layer that I thought was appropriate to be provided here to the board.
Thank you, Dr. Steer. Anyone else? Director Cote?
Thank you. So there is a youth harm reduction award. I'm wondering if we should be looking at trying to find someone that we could make an application for submission. We could ask maybe the health network to assist, and if they could determine that if there's a person that we should nominate for this.
I think there's a meeting, is it next week? Maybe you could bring it to the health network. That would be awesome.
I think so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing I'm going to motion that there's correspondence be received for information. Moved by Director Roth. Second by Director Sparrow. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Next is request for decisions and bylaws. Annual budget for years 2026 to 2030. Terry, please go ahead.
Thank you. Presented for consideration today is first reading of the Regional Hospital District budget. We have received the letter from Island Health stating that they are happy with the $550,000 contribution related to minor capital project and equipment in our area. And I know that the Tofino conversation is still ongoing, so not really anything new to report at that time. So continuing to build that reserve And then the West Coast General Hospital debt is now finally, that last small little debenture is paid off. So fully paid off, and just focusing on building that reserve for what's to come. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Terry. Director Steer, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Terry. Thank you for the report once again. No big changes. I just had a question for clarity on the report. It shows the following amounts that have been committed to Island Health for projects, but have not been distributed as the projects are not complete. Dating back to 2015, and I see about $2.5 million within there. And I was just curious, where does that money sit? And does it actually earn interest, out of curiosity? Because I believe we've collected it, it just hasn't been distributed. Is that accurate?
Yes, so we do collect it, and then we don't provide it to Island Health until they provide us an invoice to show that things have been done. So yes, it is earning interest. We are investing some of that money to try to earn us a little bit more. That number was over 3 million last year, so there was a lot more activity this year than we have in the past couple. They are just getting geared up with some new finance staff, and I am going to reach out, because when things start looking 2015, sometimes it's time for them to just reallocate that to an existing project. So I'm just going to wait for their financial planning season to be over, and then we'll touch base on where we're going to go with that. But yeah, earning interest, and I still have it.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I was just curious, going back well over a decade now, some of those projects. So thank you for the information.
Thank you. Daniel?
Tom, along those lines, to your comment and or your question is, and to Terry's comment, there has been quite a bit of turnover with Island Health staff, and we traditionally have waited for the list that comes back from them to help us identify the various projects that we'd be prioritizing. With the discussions that we had at our last board meeting and the directions that we've had, and with what we're seeing here, I'll just put the question out to the group in terms of, is there any desire to perhaps take more of a lead role moving into the future, where we are preemptively identifying some of these key projects that we would like to see on the annual budget, as opposed to waiting for their list? And just like to welcome some comments.
Dr. Steer, do you have a comment, or do you have your hand up for a different reason?
I do, and thank you through the chair. Yes, so you bring up something that has come up very recently. I meet regularly with the Tofino Hospital Foundation, and one of their activities is raising fundraising for capital projects and certain pieces of equipment that would benefit the hospital. And it's often, I think it's an opportunity for the Regional Hospital Board in the various, from Banfield Nursing Station to West Coast General to out here on the coast, in terms of those capital projects that have been identified at the very local level on the ground. So either directly through my meetings with our site director on the West Coast here, and I'm sure in the Alberni Valley, there can be some direct conversations where those prioritized areas are, and we can help in those identifications. As you said, it is a large bureaucracy, and with consistent change of staff, it may not be as easy for those folks to be able to identify those capital projects that may be a prioritization. I would more than welcome setting up a framework through the Regional Hospital Board to engage in that conversation with quote our local health providers to have a more prioritized list in terms specifically on those capital projects, whether it be equipment, whether it be physical buildings, as I think that conversation is going to be becoming more and more to the forefront as we move into the future.
Did you want a motion for that? Because it sounds like that could be a wonderful motion.
I always welcome a motion, because obviously, as we're trying to assemble the framework for what 2026 would look for, and if we're taking on a greater facilitation role, then these additional resolutions just help us wrap that up or frame it in a better way. So, Tom, I don't know if you have any words along those lines that you'd like to flag, but I like your prioritization.
Yeah, and I don't know maybe I look to staff in terms of a motion that would be most appropriate to give staff, but certainly to convene a through the Regional Hospital Board, a prioritization of capital projects to help inform island health of regional needs. Is that, I mean, it can be wordsmithed. I'm happy to have that done.
Does that sound like a good motion, Heather?
Heather's is an excellent wordsmith.
I don't have that, but I can go back to the recording after if you're confident with that.
I'd like to second that motion. I think that's a great idea, Daniel and Director Steer. That's awesome. Any other questions or comments? Did you want to comment on the motion, Director Seeger? Did you have something else you want to talk about?
Yeah, no, I just kind of want, I totally support this. I'm just wondering, I don't know who this could be directed to, but how does this fit in with our OCP? Because it would be nice if we had like sort of 5-year planning with this as well. And I don't, maybe if I can just get a comment on whether it impacts OCP planning.
Daniel?
That's a good question that I'd have to take back to staff just to make sure that the link is clear. We do, I know that as staff prepare various OCP elements, we do pay attention to statistics that we just heard, determinants of health, for example, and obviously all the key statistics in terms of population growth and whatnot and trends. To what extent we actively loop it in, I wouldn't be able to say today. I'd rather give staff the opportunity to answer that question. So if I can take that back, we'll get back to you.
Thank you. Does everyone understand the motion? Any final questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Could I get a motion that this correspondence be received for information? Moved by Director Roth, second by Director Beckett. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried.
Oh,
Sorry, I was on the wrong motion.
We need
Sorry. Sorry, I got confused here. We need a motion to approve the first reading of the annual budget for the years 2026 to 2030. Moved by Director Roth, seconded by Director Cote. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. So staff report, Agricultural Land Commission exclusion process and prospective campus of care. And I was wondering if you could be joining us, Mike. Please go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. There has been lots of discussion, community presentation about a proposed campus of care with the location being in the city of Port Alberni on some property that's in the Agricultural Land Reserve. And I just prepared this report to outline the process for the exclusion. And I think that's important. So I am summarizing the process to exclude land from the LR for clarification for the board and anybody watching or reading this. But I just think it's important to be clear that I'm not speaking for the city of Port Alberni, and I'm not speaking with regard to this application. So this process applies throughout BC if a local government owns land or takes on resolves to take an application to exclude land within their boundaries. So I wanted to clarify that and just go through the steps of the process and answer any questions that anybody would have. So once a local government has decided to proceed with an application to exclude property from or make an application to exclude property from the LR, that's the first step. The application is initiated by the local government. And then there's a process they have to make it up, go through some steps within the ALC portal. There is a public notification or there's a public hearing required to do this for all local governments. There's a public notification requirement before submission, and the local government must post a sign on the property, publish notice of the public hearing in 2 newspaper ads, similar to what we do for public hearings. Provide a copy, I think this is important for the ACRD, provide a copy of the application to adjacent or affected local governments or First Nations where applicable. So it's, in this specific instance, this property would border on the ACRD. So there's a requirement to notify the ACRD of the public hearing date. and again, I'm going through the legislated minimum requirements that for this. The public hearing is held to get input. The council, the board decision makes a decision, and then if approved, submits that application to the LC, and the LC makes the decision. So I think I will sort of stop there and answer any questions that anybody has.
Thank you for that information. Director Boyko.
Thank you for the clarification on the process involved. One thing about having an aging farmer, how do you want to say this, demographic, is that people were around when this area was, when the whole Walmart Staples area was developed. And I've heard quite a few people telling me that this land at that time was promised to be allocated for a farmer's market. So just putting that out there, that was promises made back then, and hopefully they'll be kept moving forward in the future. And that's been sent to me by many people. Thank you.
I'm not sure if you came to the meeting that was held on Sunday night when they did the presentation at the Campus of Care, and that was actually brought up. And they said they would be very happy to support a farmer's market in that area. They'll have a nice big parking lot. However, they did indicate that there's so many other farmers markets. So maybe that's something that you would like to do, is try and pull all these farmers markets together and have one big farmers market that we can all enjoy instead of around all these smaller ones. So that would be fantastic.
I think this town would love to have one big farmers market, but there's a reason that there's more than one in this town. Thank you.
And Director Cote, then Director Sparrow.
Thank you. Through the chair to staff, would this application be made by the city of Port Alberni, or would it be made by the regional district?
The property is owned by the city of Port Alberni, so we have to put in the application. Director Sparrow, then Director Roth.
Thank you. I know it's an ALR, and obviously it's going to get a lot of airtime and conversation because it is. But it says in here, one of the potential sites under consideration is located within the ALR. So there are more than one potential site that they could look at, and are any in the regional district?
Not at this time, there isn't, and that was discussed at the meeting. I just wanted to be clear in the report that this is potential. This is subject to the, you know, sort of a proceeding being approved by the city of Port Alberni. I wanted to be really clear in the report that it was brought up because there's a potential for this Campus of Care at this property. There's a number of steps, including the LC application, that would be required. So there, and again, there was discussion at the meeting about other sites that really aren't suitable. So that, you know, but again, that was the discussion by the people sort of proposing this.
Director Roth, then Director Cote. Please go ahead, Director Roth.
I'm in favor of moving this forward through the process just to see what happens, because it's, you know, it probably will take a year or so to go through the process, and it's really holding up something that's really important. And I don't know if it'll be successful in the end, because I know how tough the Agricultural Land Commission is, and that they've turned down other similar applications in the province. So I would just like to see this go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Director Roth. Director Cote.
Thank you. My question is regarding the application from the city. Would that go to the Agricultural Land Commission in the regional district, or does that avoid the regional district services altogether? Thank you.
Does it not come here for approval first before it moves on, Mike? We just clarify that.
So the legislation, so what the city of Port Alberni requests is one thing. The legislation requires that the ACRD is notified if and when there's a public hearing held. Okay. What the ACRD board does with that notification is up to the ACRD board. Okay, but I think this is just the legal requirements. Again, I think that would be, you would, so as a board, if this happens, it will be referred to the board. What the board does with it would be up to the board, and any additional requests the city of Port Alberni were to make would be up to the city of Port Alberni.
So I'm assuming then that this does not be referred to the Agricultural Advisory Committee I thought it would cover because it's for the ACRD and the city is part of the ACRD. And I think that the agricultural land, my assumption is that they would support it and be able to give a letter of support. But I know that there's been other applications that they've given support to. So thanks.
I mean, I think I wanted to highlight the legislative requirements. You know, additional processes is really a decision for the city of Port Alberni to make in the ACRD. And it was important to have this discussion because it does get confusing in that almost all of the ALR land, with the exception of this parcel, is within the ACRD. The ACRD I mean, we were involved when there was an ALR exclusion application for McLean's Mill recently. Again, a little bit different circumstances because the ACRD was more involved because that property was actually in the ACRD but owned by the city of Port Alberni. So there's some different legislative requirements. You know, again, nothing prohibits the board from referring things or the city of Port Alberni from requesting input on certain things. It's just not legislatively required.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, get a motion that the Regional Hospital Board of Directors receive report A. Moved by Director Cote, second by Director Sparrow. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mike. That was good information. We have on to director reports, the Tofino General Hospital replacement. I know we talked briefly about this at the last meeting, but I wanted to bring it forward to this meeting because we didn't really have any action items related to this. And I just wanted to make sure that Tofino felt that it was being supported by the board. So I wanted to bring this back. So I'll get Director Steer to start the conversation on this. Go ahead, Director Steer.
Great. Thank you through the chair. And yes, back on the 21st of January, there was basically a letter from the District of Tofino, which recognized that this is a regional project and that the advocacy should come from a regional voice. And so Tofino submitted the letter with the idea that as the regional body, and specifically the Regional Hospital Board for capital projects, was a good place to be able to convene that request that the ACRDs have support to coordinate this table. And what that looks like, I mean, would be the mayors and chiefs and elected officials in those areas. And so that letter came to the board. I know that there's some discussion with Daniel, and I think what we're looking for now is maybe if that is something that the board thought was appropriate, that there may be a motion. And I looked at staff first, and I looked at Daniel. Maybe he may have some comments in terms of the conversations that have been ensuing around a more directed voice to specifically the Ministry of Infrastructure in this case, but to be the liaison or the coordinator of those chiefs and mayors, because they are a body that has within our membership here, as well as those connections outside of the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Hospital Board. So maybe Daniel, I'll let you maybe comment, and then if there is room for a potential motion, I'll look to make that at the end of this information.
Thank you, Director Steer. Daniel, please go ahead.
Thanks, Tom. It certainly makes sense that the regional district be amplifying sort of regional need, right? And so I think what we've seen over the last few years is different municipalities. Every municipality or First Nations government has had their own initiatives, and we've often supported if we're aware, and we're often a little late in becoming aware, I'll say that. And so flipping that on its head and getting ahead of this so that we can maximize the leveraging of that regional push and the united voice certainly makes sense. I think the resolution that was made with regard to the three options at the last board meeting, since that resolution, staff have been reaching out. We've had discussions with as many people as possible around that, including the community groups that are currently working on those initiatives. Marcy, who presented to us today, we've had some discussions around what that would look like. I've met with Nyla and Richard to talk about that as well. And so what we're trying to do right now is create some clarity around a work plan on who could do what and what that would look like. So I think right now, rather than try and draft a resolution, I would recommend that we allow staff the opportunity to come back with a bit of what they've assembled in the last week or the last couple of weeks, so that we could give you like option A, B, and C in terms of our potential approach. And if there's resolutions to draw out of that, it would probably make more sense. But what we are certainly paying attention to is that there are a number of needs across the region. Obviously, some of the conversation has been dominated right now in the Alberni Valley with the announcement of Tofino Hospital. Then we do need to pay attention in Tofino. And of course, every time there is an incident or an issue that's taking place in the Banfield area, we pay attention to that too, because they're also, running on a shoestring budget with a lot of dependency on volunteers and the goodwill of people in the area, and hopefully an open road from time to time in order to provide service. So the ability to coordinate and facilitate dialogue in a good way that then comes back to this table so that we can then strategically lean in and prioritize what year we'd like to see what happening would really make a lot of sense. And I would like, it's my long-winded way of saying, I would like a bit more time to put some meat on that bone so that we could have the best possible resolution.
Is that agreeable to you, Director Steer, if we wait for staff to come back with a report before making a motion on this? I just don't want it to get lost in the shuffle, so it feels like staff was working on it. Do you want to comment?
Yeah, and I think and after maybe I'll just quickly comment and then give Ada a chance, and then I'll come back with in the interim what I'd like to see. And I recognize the workload of staff at all our local governments here in the region. Once again, I think the issue, the reason for the expediency of this is because of the concept plan being asked to be revised by the Ministry of Infrastructure, and really not having good clarification on what that might look like, because the idea of that, quote, campus of care concept that the ministry is not comfortable with, and more an acute facility. I think this is the reason for the expediency, and the reason for bringing this forward in a much quicker time frame is because of the finally, after, and I've been working on this for close to a decade, having it before government with the concept plan, and now we would like to move it to the next phase, of course, the business planning phase. So that's why the expediency, and that's why sort of you're seeing a much more concerted effort in terms of a lobbying effort based on what the Ministry of Infrastructure has brought back to Island Health and looking for that revision. I'll leave it there, and maybe I'll give Director Siga a chance to comment, and then I'll come back with maybe a suggestion that I would have for the board to consider.
Before I move to Director Siga, do you have sort of a timeline when this report will be coming back?
We were hoping to have a bit of a high-level framework while we're still in budget deliberations. So, likely if it's not the end of February, it'd be the first in March. But then also hearing what you're saying, Director Steer, is just you've triggered a lot of additional thinking around some desire to coordinate or some early commitment from the ministry to coordinate around, if not this, then what? And we would definitely need them at the table in order to achieve that. So that's what I'm hearing right now, and I'm going to think about that.
Okay, I'll go to Director Siga. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that this was basically all approved through the Ministry of Health. And it's been 40 years in the process. back in the 80s, we were actually approved for a community health center. And this new layering is of the Ministry of Infrastructure approving any capital builds is a new layer. And I see it as a bottleneck if that's truly what it is. And if this new layering is creating issues for us, it's creating issues throughout the province. So I'm wondering if we shouldn't just write a letter to the Premier identifying that this is a real bottleneck for projects that are on the books for 40 years.
I think it was a means for people to, for the provincial government to say no. That's my impression. I don't know, but they're the holders of the purse strings, the Ministry of Infrastructure. Yeah, Director Steer.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe I can go offline with it, but so I don't take up too much of the board's time here. But the quick, it's a new ministry that was created, the Ministry of Infrastructure, which is responsible for all of the big infrastructure projects within the province. And before it was the purview of the Ministry of Health. There has never been a concept plan accepted by government for a replacement of the Tofino General Hospital. It has been talked about for many years, as you've indicated, but nothing has gone before government until now. When it first was presented by Island Health to the Ministry of Health for funding approvals or to move it to the next phase, there was a hold there because we had an election and then a new ministry was created, and that concept plan then went from Island Health up to the new Ministry of Infrastructure, who has really no expertise in the delivery of healthcare services. They're responsible for bridges, tunnels, the list goes on. So the hospitals is now part of those conversations for them. And it comes down to money. That's the bottom line. And that's the lens that they look through. And that's what we'd like to inform them of, that there's much more to consider when we're looking at the delivery of healthcare in very regional contexts.
Thank you for the clarification and the history. Director Cote.
Thank you. I just want, there's a process happening here, but I want to remind, maybe staff could send Teresa Dennison, the AVICC coordinator, a note saying that part of the chairs, chiefs, and mayors meeting that they have at AVICC, this could be one of the topics that's brought forward, because you know, it's not just us that is being affected by all of Island Health and this new infrastructure committee or service. It just still irks me that, you know, I've been on the board for so long and I've seen the list of, you know, that Island Health has put forward. You know, Tofino Hospital was on that list, and I believe it was next on the list to be built. And, you know, looking at Cowichan having a new hospital in billions. So I'm really concerned that our area, the ACRD, is consistently overlooked by the provincial government. Consistently, for anything that we want to have here, anything that's going to benefit our community. It just seems that we're always at the end of the line and pushed back. So I support what we're doing here, and yeah, if AVICC can help, please bring it forward there. Thank you.
Thank you. Great idea. Director Steer.
It'll lead into one, but I don't want to push back, Director Cote, but I do want to say that I don't want to say that Island Health has ignored our region. I think of the opening of the Community Health Center in Ucluelet, the emergency room renovations at West Coast General, and some of the other work that is done, the Sobering and Assessment Center here on the West Coast. So there has been some recognition, but I do recognize that there's much more to be done, and you're right. All regions of the province are looking for more increased services. that being said, I think it'd be important that maybe I'll look to the board to see if I think it would be important for the Ministry of Infrastructure to explain to the Regional Hospital Board, the Alberni Clayoquot Regional Hospital Board, the reasonings directly. Jesse Tannenbaum, who delivered the message last time, he was the messenger, the bearer of bad news. It would be good to hear directly from the Ministry of Infrastructure around the criteria that they're using to make these decisions. And maybe it would also give us an opportunity to explain the regional issues that encompass the reason why we need a replacement health facility here on the West Coast around that campus of care concept, as opposed to just an acute care facility in our region. So I would look to the board to see to an extent, and I don't know if we have in the past, extend a direct invitation to the Ministry of Infrastructure to report to present to the Regional Hospital Board on the concept plan revision request for the Tofino General Hospital.
Now, remember after that last meeting, we did write a follow-up letter. Did we receive any kind of reply? So I think we should maybe send a second letter. Okay. Okay. Do you want to make that a motion to invite them to the next hospital board meeting, Director Steer?
Yeah, if I can move, I'll move the request I just and present it to the board.
Moved by Director Steer, second by Director Cote. Any questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Okay, so Director Steer, are you okay that we wait until we get the staff report regarding the board of the request that from your letter? Okay,
yes.
Perfect. So can you just communicate to Mayor Law that we are working on this? Thank you.
Yeah.
Would anybody like to move that the Regional Hospital Board of Directors receive report A? Moved by Director Ross, second by Director Sparrow. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Now we'll go to Director's reports. Banfield Health Center, Director Beckett.
No report, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Alberni Clayoquot Continuing Care Society, Director Siga.
Thank you very much. Yeah, the Board of Directors held their meeting January 30th. The strategic plan is complete, and now the reporting to the board is based on benchmarks within the strategic plan. Lately, there have been significant cuts at both of the facilities due to funding not being increased. Basically, the union getting higher wages hasn't been reflected in the money that is coming in from the province through the Ministry of Health, and we have reached out to the Minister of Health and tried to get some answers around that, but it's not unique to our facilities that this is happening, apparently. And that's my report. Thanks.
Thank you. West Coast Native Healthcare Society, Director Cote.
Thank you. I believe Rainbow Gardens is facing the same issues, but I didn't attend the last meeting. Our next meeting is February the 19th.
We've talked a lot about Tofino General Hospital, but did you have anything to add, Director Steer?
No, I think we've covered a lot of Tofino General Hospital today. Thanks.
Thank you. Alberni Clayoquot Health Network, Director Cote.
Thank you. Through the chair, special thanks to Marcy for coming and delivering a presentation today. You're doing a wonderful job. We have new members at our table of partners, and our meeting is next week, I believe. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you. West Coast General Hospital. I don't have a report on the hospital, but a report on the Campus of Care initiative. On Sunday, the Alberni Valley Care Society and Community Futures presented the Campus of Care model to the community. And considering it was Super Bowl Sunday, the room was very full and it was very well received. There was, as I mentioned earlier, one person did stand up and ask about the markets, and they assured that if that's what the community wanted, they would absolutely support that because they will have quite a large parking lot where it could be done. So they're moving forward, trying to complete the application for the Agriculture Land Commission, and they're moving forward. So, any other reports? Oh, Director Boyko.
Well, not really a report. I'm just glad to see. I saw some pictures of the meeting on Sunday night. It's good to see good public engagement, especially on a school night. So when we move forward into the next, after the next election, we start talking about meetings at nighttime. I'm sure that'll be a good reference point that when the public is engaged and wants to show up, they will certainly do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Get a motion that the Regional Hospital Board of Directors receive reports A through G. Moved by Director Sparrow, second by Director Cote. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. No unfinished business, no late business. Is there any questions online, Heather?
There are no questions received, and there's only Marcy in the audience.
Thank you. Get a motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Director Roth. Second by Director Steer. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. We'll see everyone back here at 1:30 after lunch. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye.